I don't know if you ever saw those instant oatmeal that had the dinosaur eggs in it. They would you pour the hot water and they would hatch in the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Unreal.
That's amazing.
That was the coolest stuff.
Were those marshmallows that popped out?
No, it was it was just a sugar cell or shell, and then inside was another sugar thing.
Once the water hit it and it
dissolved.
Heated up, yeah. All right.
That was everything for me.
Whoever came up with that's a very clever idea.
I know technology.
Some food scientist somewhere in the R&D department for Quaker Oats was like, "What if?"
Hear me out.
Everybody's
into the chicken nuggets with dinosaurs.
Little dinosaurs in your oatmeal that expand when it cooks.
And it definitely will not be a choking hazard.
Right.
We have nothing to worry about there.
Be like, come on, Steve. Nobody wants... As I break the studio here. Nobody wants dinosaurs in their oatmeal. Wait a minute. Yes, all children.
It turns out every child wants
dinosaurs in their oatmeal. All right, good. Well, hey, by the way, this is the Dallas Film Podcast. We talk about dinosaurs and oatmeal. My name is Tony Armour. I am the Dallas Film Commissioner, and we're excited to have Tyler Germaine with us here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. Well, let's start out. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Yeah, I'm, like I said, my name is Tyler Germaine. I'm out of Fort Worth, Texas, but I work in DFW all around. I am a photographer, a filmmaker, and an artist in this area. So anything with the camera is kind of my thing.
And how long have you been doing anything with a camera?
Professionally since 2016. So what is that, 8 years now, 7 years, something like that. I started in the film industry, working my way up until I was a DP and director. Been doing that for the last 5 years. And then a couple of years ago, I began my transition into photography, but I'm still kind of doing both.
Yeah. And did you grow up in this market then?
Yeah, I grew up in Saginaw, Texas. I was right out, 30 minutes north of Fort Worth. That was kind of my area. Always hanging out in Fort Worth whenever I needed fun.
Yeah, I always think of Saginaw, Michigan, because I grew up in Ohio, and there's a Saginaw, Michigan, so I didn't even know that there was a Saginaw, Texas.
Texas is, the greatest state of stealing names from other places.
All right, well, maybe Saginaw, Michigan stole it from there. Well,
we don't know.
It's an Indian name, right? So it probably has something to do with whatever the Native American tribe and the Saginaw. It's probably the Saginaw Indians that were in Michigan and Texas. Yeah, that can be completely wrong. I have no idea. I'm just making all that up as we go along here. So, and then you did you go to film school here?
Mm-hmm. I went to TCU. Graduated in 2017 with a film degree.
What did your parents think about you going to get a film degree? They're like, Tyler, we know it's something that you're passionate about, but you need to eat. So
my parents were very adamant. We made a deal that I broke, which was that I would go to film school and have my fun, but then I had to go to get my MBA after. And I never got that MBA.
Because you started working right away. Yeah, and you were like, look, I'm making a living. Do I still need to go get the MBA?
Exactly. I got to a point, I got very lucky and got connected into the film industry pretty early on. So in that summer before my senior year. And I started getting to a point where I was skipping classes to go work on set. Wow. And so that was the point where my parents were like, all right, I guess he's got something here.
Yeah. Well, there was a consistency, right? That's because the biggest worry is hey, you go get that film degree, but then you don't actually have anything to do. But I think the benefit of Texas and this area in general is it's a huge commercial market.
Mm-hmm, massive.
So, you can make a living and never make an actual feature film or documentary or anything just in sort of the commercial world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's how a lot of people are here. And in a lot of ways, I think that's kind of cool because I think commercial world is a lot better space to learn how film works.
Yeah.
Because it's so quick, it's so fast. You have to know exactly what you're doing. And you meet people who have been doing it for so long. And it's not like film where you're on one project or two projects a year. Instead, it's like you're on, 200 to 300 projects a year.
Yeah, you're doing as much. You could work 1 day, 2 days, 3 days on a project, and then you're on to the next one. And even though it's a big market, but it's small industry at the same time. It is a big industry, but everybody knows everybody. Once you get into it, you see the same people on set, different times, no matter what it is. And there's a real career that can be had, doing that part of the industry.
Absolutely. I mean, it's great that after 2 or 3 years, I don't think I've ever been on a set within this area that I didn't know somebody on.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So what's your primary focus? So you are freelancing essentially as a director, a cinematographer, and still photographer.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything else as well?
So I I was freelancing up until the beginning of last year. And then I got hired by Red Productions out of Fort Worth, Texas, as their in-house photographer. They just picked up a deal with Dickies to do all their product photography. So I am the photographer that does all that.
Hence wearing the Dickies shirt today.
Wearing the Dickies shirt. I get fortunately a lot of free clothes.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. So I've been doing that, but within the film, it's obviously a lot of commercial, and I direct a lot of documentaries.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
What have you done documentary-wise recently?
So I recently released two. One back in 2021, which was following. I was a drumline guy all through high school and college. So I was really interested. I was in marching band, did all that whole thing. When the pandemic struck, there was a lot of competitive indoor drumline, which is a whole thing. It's hard to explain, but basically imagine drumline mixed with theater and dance, and it's a performance, and it's this really wild thing. I highly recommend everybody go look up. It's called WGI, Winter Guard International. Just look that up on YouTube and find some stuff. It's really crazy. So my high school that I went to is actually one of the top high schools for WGI in the country.
Oh, cool.
Just got lucky that way.
Right.
I was very passionate about it, and I loved it a lot. Whenever the pandemic happened, they weren't able to continue performing. It's a lot of competition throughout the country that they do. They weren't able to do that competition, obviously, because they weren't allowed to travel or anything like that, but they continued to do a performance. So I actually got to do a documentary following them going through the pandemic and how these high schoolers, one, are reacting to the pandemic in this really strange time, but also how are they, continuing on with this performance and this passion they have.
That's very cool. Yeah, because my only knowledge of drum lines is from like HBCUs, like college football games kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very much one of those things that if you don't know about it, you have no clue it exists. But if you know about it, it's the coolest thing you've ever seen.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating that there's just this niche thing that exists like that. Drum line. All right.
Yeah, you would never know. But
no, you wouldn't. You really wouldn't.
But hey, I have a whole documentary about it now, so you can go watch that.
What's the name of the documentary?
It's called Rebound.
Rebound. Yeah. And where can you watch it?
It's on YouTube. It's on Vimeo. It's on social media.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And that was 2021. That was
2021. And then I just released end of last year a documentary about TCU. We were reached out by TCU. They just had their 150th anniversary. Wow. And so they reached out to Red Productions, who I had been working with for the last 7 years before they even hired me, to shoot a documentary over the course of 4 years following 8 students and kind of going from very beginning of freshman year all the way to their graduation.
Oh, that's cool.
It was a really cool concept. At first, they didn't really know what they wanted to be like more historical. Mm-hmm. It was going to be like this was just kind of a small element of it. But I was hired on as director about halfway through after the pandemic happened, and they just had all this footage, and they're like, we don't really know what to do with this.
Yeah.
So I got hired on to kind of take off the last 2 years and continue on with the next 2 years and trying to make a story about these 8 kids going. I think it ended up actually only being 3 kids that was featured, but going through 4 years of college, which was an incredible experience. One, to be on a project for 4 years long. But also to really watch how these kids grow.
Well, I was going to say that would be the fascinating thing 18 to 22 doesn't sound like a lot, but 18 to 22 is a huge jump in your life. When you go to think of, when we think back, I think back, what was I like at 18? What was I like at 22? Completely different human being, from 30 to 34 or 40 to 44.
It's kind of just, it's a thing.
You're good. You're about the same. But 18 to 22 is a big difference. So that had to be really interesting to see that kind of all transform, how the kids transform throughout.
Yeah, and it was incredible. I mean, it was a massive transformation, and even like it kind of felt like I remember when I was a camera operator on it for the first 2 years, and then whenever I came on as director, I would go back and rewatch all the interviews between them just to like get familiar with all the kids. And just to see them even in 2 years, like how much they changed from freshman year to sophomore year was insane. But then to go through all 4 years, plus they're going through a pandemic. Right. Plus, and I don't want to give away too much spoilers, but one of the kids, has a parent die halfway through. Sure. And she talks about that a lot. And so you see, there's more than just college happening.
Yeah, of course.
There's all this other stuff in life happening, and they're just going through it.
Well, and I'm a documentary filmmaker myself. And so one of the things is whatever story you think you start to tell when you're making a documentary, that is not the story you end up telling.
Never
it
is.
Always changes once you get into it and you start, it's real life.
Yeah.
And while documentaries, and we were just having this conversation in the previous podcast episode, documentaries aren't just fact. There's a certain point of view. There's a story that you're telling. Mm-hmm. It depends on the people and how things are changing in their lives. So I love documentary filmmaking.
Absolutely. I always say it's like the jazz of filmmaking because there's so much improv in that. It's just kind of like there may be a structure, there may be some kind of idea or what you're going for, but there's just so much like on the shooting, you're going to be going crazy.
Yeah. Well, and then when you get into that edit and you're still trying to, okay, here's a 3-act structure. We're still trying to tell this documentary story in this 3-act structure. What things that we've captured or shot fit into a 3-act structure and make sense? And so you could tell multiple stories out of whatever footage you've shot.
Yeah.
Like whatever story you ended up telling, you could have picked 3 other versions of whatever your story is.
Yeah, exactly. And that was like the big obstacle with this one. Like I said, we followed 8 kids throughout this. And once we got down to it, we're like, we can't tell 4 years of 8 kids' stories for 4 years. Like, that's too much. We had to like narrow it down. And it was so hard to choose who we wanted to feature because every single kid had a different story.
Right.
Every single kid was going through something completely different. And it was like, this is 8 stories that are incredible, but we have to pick 3.
So did you focused on those 3 and cut the other 5 out completely, or did you have little pieces of the others in there at all?
We did a first version where we left all of them in, where they would kind of provide more context to the school and what was going through at the times. But in the end, we ended up realizing it was just more confusing to have all of them in, so we ended up cutting all 5.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Probably sad for them. They're like, really?
Yeah, they spent all that
4
time.
years and I didn't even make it. Or did you go 2 years and then you kind of cut it?
No, it was at the very end that we decided.
Oh, wow.
It was really difficult. And I remember having that like conversation with a lot of them of just being like, I am so sorry. Like, I feel bad. I feel horrible. And they were just like, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Luckily, most of them were very understanding. So
were any of them film majors?
No, one was a philosophy major. We had a girl who was in pre-med and is now going to be on a doctorate, and the last guy was in advertising. Oh. So it was just like this very wide array of people.
Sure, interesting.
Yeah.
Because I would think if there were any film majors on there, it'd be like, can you just give me the footage?
Yeah, can I just make this
and myself? I'll make my own little documentary about my experiences going through 4 years of school.
I think that's maybe why we didn't do any film majors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and then if you put a film major in there too, then while they're shooting, they're thinking, giving you tips, right? Like, why don't you do this?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times we were on campus filming and we would have film majors walk up to us because they would see a camera and just be like a fly attracted to a light.
Of course.
And we had to be like, they'd be like, can we just like operate the camera a little bit? And I was like, well, we're kind of doing a job here, But it was fun. And we got to like talk to them a lot and like show them what a real working film, production looks like.
Yeah, very cool. And so that one is recently finished. Is that?
Yes.
What are you doing with that? Are you playing film festivals how is that being released?
It just got released through TCU. We did a premiere through TCU and they're kind of doing a round, sending it out to alumni and potential prospects of students right now. And then the goal is to then push it out into festivals and see what we can get out of it.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah,
that's a lot of fun. If at some point you need to talk about the film festival world, let me know. I've lived in that space for 20 years.
Absolutely, would love to,
and can give you some advice on that.
Yeah.
So, as you go off to film school, when you're a kid, what was it that made you want to do film school? Because there's always something. There's always a reason that like
that little spark.
Yeah, there's that spark, or there's one film, or you grow up because the parents love film and you just get into it. What was it for you?
So, I mean, it started really young. There was kind of like 3 things that happened, but my dad was very much of the 80s. Like, that was his era. He was a radio DJ at that point.
Okay.
So most of my childhood was him being like, the 80s is the best era, and show me all that. So he would show me, Star Wars, and the one that hit me was Indiana Jones. Like, I love that movie. The trilogy was like incredible.
Of course. Raiders Lost Ark is my favorite film of all time.
It's my top 3.
And when I saw that film, that's what made me want to be a filmmaker.
Exactly, same. And I think at the same time, Pirates of the Caribbean was just starting to get released. So like for me, that was also like a huge one of like just the adventurous of it.
Sure.
That was super exciting. And then around when I got a little bit older, YouTube started becoming a thing. Mm-hmm. And I always loved the beginning era of YouTube because it was at this time where I think the highest paid YouTuber was like making like $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
Versus today where they're making millions.
Yeah.
So majority of people on YouTube were not doing it for money. They were trying to just do exposure kind of stuff. So they were just putting skits out there just to do it. And I always thought that was a really like kind of a golden era because there was people just doing creative stuff for creative sake. So that was happening. And that was I was like kind of the first generation to be introduced to YouTube because I think it started when I was like 12. So it was exciting just to be like, I want to be a YouTuber. Like filmmaking wasn't on my radar. It was like, I want to be a YouTuber.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think. I think 2007-ish is when, because I think I started my YouTube channel in like 2007, like when it
you're right on it.
When it first kicked off. And I've got a couple hundred videos, and I'm not consistent with doing anything at all. Mm-hmm. But it is the most random YouTube channel you will ever. There's just weird random stuff all over the place. There's no now if you watch YouTube, it's literally us. It's 2 guys in front of a microphone talking, or it's girls talking, or they're doing makeup tutorials,
or gaming, or
gaming, like or all these different things. They're very focused on like the one thing. This channel is about this.
Yeah.
But when YouTube first started, it was just people making whatever they wanted to make. And
I mean, it was
putting
wild.
Yeah.
It was a Wild West phase. And so I loved that creativity. I loved what people were doing with it, just like having so much fun with it. And I remember I had a friend named Caleb who lived in my neighborhood. He was one of my best friends. And I'd spend the night at his house all the time. And I went over there one day. We had another, one of our closest friends named Zach. And the three of us were all going to spend the night there. I get to Caleb's house first. We're just hanging out, having a good time. And then Zach shows up. He had just gone to a garage sale where he bought a camcorder for like $10. Now, it's like the worst camcorder because I'm sure it didn't even shoot 720. Like, it was bad.
Right.
But we didn't care. We didn't know any different. And we were like, okay, we got to make something with this. Like, we can't just let this opportunity slide. So we ended up making like 2 videos, like little skits that night. And then I think the next morning we made like another one. And then that became our thing. Like every weekend we would get together and just make skits. And we didn't put it on YouTube. I think we put like one on YouTube, but that was it. Like, we never released any of it. It was just purely for us.
Yeah.
You know, editing on Windows Movie Maker.
Right. Yeah.
Doing that kind of thing. And it kept building. We'd bring other friends into it. And it got to the point where we ended up making like, I think, like 3, like a trilogy, like a feature-length trilogy that only exists on CDs or DVDs. Like they don't exist anywhere. And we did that all throughout high school and middle school. And then eventually we were lucky in that I went to Eagle Mountain, Saginaw. Okay. And one of the coolest things about Eagle Mountain, Saginaw that I think not a lot of schools, like I think almost no school districts get, is we got what was called the Hollenstein Career and Technology Center, which was this special school only for junior and seniors for the 3 high schools that was in my district, where we could go and learn trades. And I mean, it was everything from learning how to be a mechanic, how to build computers, being a chef. And one of the greatest things is they had a film program. Huh. It was at that time led by a guy named Jerome Butler, who runs Game Day Productions, or he's like one of the senior producers at Game Day Productions in Irving. He managed to work out this deal with TCU where they donated a ton of cameras. We had a full sound stage, full mixing studio, full editing. Like, it was
for a high school kid. That's amazing.
It was incredible. I mean, it was unreal. I still don't know how we got that lucky. Yeah. And I remember, he taught us everything from how to wrap a cable, how to edit on Premiere, all these things that you're
still using them today.
100%. I think I learned more in that 1 year because I only did my senior year. Yeah. I think I learned more in that 1 year than I did all 3 years of college that I was there.
Really?
Yeah.
That's honestly, so funny.
It was like such an intense, amazing experience. I remember we would go there. It was like 2 periods long. Yeah. So we would go there for half the day or for like a quarter of the day, go back to school. Then after school, we would go back after hours to like keep working on our own projects. Like, it was just such an exciting thing. And so it just got cemented into me. I'm like, this is what I'm doing.
And I think that's the cool thing about, a lot of high school programs now. There are a lot of high school programs now who have like film video programs where, I'm older than you. And so I grew up like going to high school in the 80s. And so I took a filmmaking class in high school and we shot on Super 8 film, which was amazing to get the Super 8 camera. But there was an English teacher who just loved film who taught us about shots and all the stuff that I learned like in that high school filmmaking class. I remember one time I had a friend of mine who's taking a filmmaking class at the University of Toledo because I grew up in Ohio. Yeah. And I was bored, wasn't in the class. I just literally went to the class that day with him, and they had a test. And so I took the test, and then later he said that the professor was like, this guy took the test, and he got an A, but he's not in the class. He like had the test or whatever. Yeah. But it was all stuff that I had learned in that high school filmmaking class, and then shooting films on Super 8. Yeah. That then they just carry on for as you get on into your career or whatever else. But those formative years when you're learning that, they just stick with you and you kind of go from there. So much. And it's something, it's an argument I've always said, like, and I'm not going to knock film school. I think there is a value to it and an importance to it. But a lot of that is very theory-based and like how to watch a movie, Yeah. The experience is so much better. And like so much more impactful to anybody who's able to get into it at a very young age. Even if you're just shooting like with camcorders and using Windows Movie Maker, like that, I learned so much more about how to make a movie from that than anything else I've ever done. Yeah, just make stuff. Yeah, and even now, obviously with cell phones, there's no excuse. You can shoot 4K on a phone. You can get little lens adapters so you can have different lens choices and everything. There's no reason not to just go make stuff on phones. Everybody literally has. If you were to tell some kid in the 1970s or 80s that, hey, you can carry around an entire film studio in your pocket. Yeah, edit on it. Edit on it. Like, they would be blown away. Yeah. It would be amazing to think of. It's incredible. And I mean, things are just getting cheaper and cheaper. Lights are getting cheaper. Cameras are getting cheaper. Microphones are getting cheaper. Like, there's almost, I'm not going to say no excuse, but there's so much opportunity
for anybody who wants to do it, just to go out and do it. And that's an incredible thing for our generation.
Yeah. Well, and it's the repetitiveness too. Like, obviously, if you look back at the ones you made on that camcorder when you were in high school, you're like, oh my God,
these are bad.
These are really bad. I don't want anybody to ever see these, but that's the whole point. You've got to, it's that whole 10,000 hour rule thing.
Yeah.
You've just got to practice and practice and practice and keep going as you develop your craft.
Yeah, exactly. I don't remember who said this, but they were talking about how, because there's so much opportunity for not only for us to create it, but to also just share it through TikTok and YouTube and things like that. There is a lot more crap, which is just a fact. But because there's more crap, and if you dig through it, there's also a lot more gold. Yeah, because we have this opportunity, and it's just one of those things. The more you make it, the better you get, and eventually something's just going to hit.
What drives me crazy is that, and I know why. It just is what it is. But just vertical video.
Oh my God! Yeah.
It's like the phone turns sideways.
Yeah,
you can turn it and make 16:9.
Yeah,
but no one does it, and so everyone has just given up and just defaulted to shooting everything vertical now.
Yeah,
and when you're editing something, you have to have the vertical version for social media.
Yeah,
like, but you can do it. It literally exists that way.
You can do it. That's how it's made.
That's how it's made. You don't have to watch it on a small, tiny. My girlfriend will literally take her phone and it'll be a horizontal video that she's just watching vertically that's just at the very top. And I was like, just turn your phone sideways. And she's like, why? I was like, please, for me.
Just do it.
Just do it. It'll fill up the whole thing. She's like, but I don't care. I was like, but I care.
It's gotten to that point where like, I can't stand, when it's like, it's the 9:16, but then they have the blurred background and make it 16:9. I'm like, just turn the camera, please.
Yeah. It drives me crazy. So little filmmaking pet peeves.
Always. It's always going to be there. This weird new era we're in.
Yeah, no, it's, but I don't know, what comes next, right? Or there's all the talk about AI and AI in filmmaking and AI editing. And so every once in a while, like on my YouTube feed, something will pop up and say, "Ooh, this new AI, editing program, it does the editing for you." And you look at it and it's like, it's not doing the editing for me.
Yeah. You're still doing the work.
Yeah, you're still doing the work. This is not saving me any time. You still have to go through the footage, pick what you want, edit it. There's little things, and Premiere's become really great about having lots of little tools, whether it's through, the audio tools to being able to transcribe it and things like that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, like all that's great. But you still can't just dump your footage and then it
comes out like that.
Spits out something for you. All the work still has to go into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been my argument with AI from the beginning. Like, it's nothing more than a tool.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to take, it might take some jobs, but it's not going to take every job because there still has to be the people behind it doing that, using it, and knowing how to use it.
Yeah, like I'm not, for many years, if I needed something transcribed, there is a company called Transcription Star.
Yeah.
You just upload the footage, you wait a couple days, they send back a transcript, and you pay whatever it is
whatever the rate is,
per minute or whatever. Premiere does it all now.
Yeah.
I don't know if Transcription Star still exists. Sorry, guys, if you've gone out of business thanks to Premiere's AI. But you don't need it. You can literally transcribe the whole video, do subtitles, all that kind of stuff, super, super easy. But that's a tool that... Who wants to be the person to listen and have to transcribe something?
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
That's not a real job that you
want
want
to do that.
That's mind numbing.
And that's kind of like that's another big argument with AI is like, I don't like the jobs it does take. It's the jobs none of us want.
Yeah.
Like no one wants to do stock footage anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like no one wants to do those little corporate videos of internal monologues or whatever.
Yeah.
Like let the AI have it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, honestly, because if you look at, and I know there are people and there are companies out there who that's literally their entire business model is just creating stock footage. Yeah. Because you could search almost anything you want and there's some weird stock video for it that somebody has thought of that they've shot.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
Yeah, it's really weird. But every variation exists.
Yeah.
And so now it's just going to be the same thing, but I guess some guy behind a computer just typed it in.
Yeah. So instead you'll be able to type in, instead of man running with scissors.
Yeah.
And they've got to go shoot it, and they're on a set somewhere that this production company in who knows where is doing it. You'll be able to put in the prompts and have man running with scissors for your stock footage instead.
And it'll look pretty good.
Yeah,
you've seen Sora, right?
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
It's insane.
Crazy. And whatever like the next version that's coming is supposed to be
even better.
Even better.
It's wild. I've been seeing this a lot with photography too. Because I've been really getting into AI with Photoshop. It's made me such a lazy photographer, but in the best way possible. I can shoot, however I want. I'm like, I can make it 4x5 expand border. It's beautiful. But they're getting to the point now with AI where you can type in, like, it's not just like, I want a picture of a girl wearing these clothes on a mountain. You know, you don't have to have that. It can also be like that same prompt, but make it look like a Hasselblad 501C on Portra 400 at an f1.2. You know, you can do all that now, which is incredible, but scary. But
now, are you doing that in Photoshop?
No, there's different programs that can do that.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of time till Photoshop's able to catch up with that.
Sure.
And like, especially with color grading and things like that, I think that's going to come in really soon. And so it's one of those things. It's like, how do I avoid that altogether as a creative, as a photographer? Like, how do I use that to my advantage rather than get, left behind with all this AI stuff?
And that's really interesting. I'm just dangerous enough with some Adobe products like Premiere. I've used Premiere for a long time. I've edited on Premiere for a long time. So, but I still will go to YouTube and be like, how do you do this? Yeah. And like look something up and be like, oh, okay. And then go and do it. And in my current job position, I'm not going out and shooting and editing like I used to, which I miss that to a certain extent. And you sort of lose that creativity and that consistency of using it. But Photoshop's not anything that I ever really I learned. And so if I need to like just jump in there and crop a picture or change size, whatever, I can do that. But it is interesting. Then I think you're right that if it gets to that point where you can, like you said, literally say, I want to look like a Hasselblad, and here's the f-stop and everything else. Photoshop will get to that point where you can do it.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I mean, Photoshop is just an insanely powerful program already. And the AI on it, I think, is better than most of the AI programs out there.
Sure.
Because you can get so selective with it. And it blends so incredibly well with everything that you're already doing. I mean, I just did a series of photos where I was for a glasses brand where it was like a close-up picture of someone wearing glasses, and we cut out their body so it just looked like a floating head.
Yeah.
And one of the hardest things in Photoshop ever is cropping out hair, especially if you're trying to change the background or whatever.
Yeah, if you've got, whether it's green or whatever color it is, and then you always get the little spill and everything else.
There's a spill, the flyaways get taken away, everything, so you lose all that. But with AI, you're able just to kind of select an edge and be like, make it look better, and boom, it looks realistic. It looks incredible. And so stuff like that has become really powerful for me. And we're still like within a year of having AI in Photoshop.
Yeah.
It's insane.
What do you think it's going to do next then? Like does it get to a point where you could just be a bad photographer and still have great pictures?
I kind of do think that because I kind of feel that way a lot of times. Like especially with cameras that are able to shoot, 100 megapixels now, with these incredibly detailed photography, I can just shoot everything wide, crop in later, know, like we already had that ability. Now I have this ability that like for example, if I shot too close and I need to widen it out, I can do that. And people do that with a video now within Photoshop's AI.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I definitely see it going towards color grading is going to be a big one. I think especially in, because we already have like, Blackmagic has that ability, like you can import a frame from a movie and say, make my color grade look like that. Boom, it can do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it has.
See, because I know Blackmagic obviously is the king of color grading, and I know a lot of people are moving from Premiere to Blackmagic for editing as well because of the integration with the color grading.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and it's free. Like the Blackmagic editing software is free, and I'm sure they do that to get you into their ecosystem.
And it's also if you do want to pay for it, it's a one-time payment.
Yeah,
that whole subscription thing.
Yeah, I know.
Really getting people.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I'm waiting for someone to make an alternative Photoshop, but it hasn't happened yet.
No. Well, they have so many years head start and so many millions, who knows, probably billions by this point of dollars in R&D that's been put into it that it's hard to do.
I mean, it is.
There's always Microsoft Paint, right?
Just paint it all in. Canva. We're going to get through it.
Right.
But yeah, it's incredible how far it's come. And I mean, I don't know where it's going to go necessarily, but I definitely think if you figure out how to use it to your advantage before it gets to you, you can really go a long way with it. So I'm personally excited about AI.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like I said, I think these are just tools.
Yeah.
Like all the little stuff, like did you really want to go zoom in 400% on somebody's hair and just like you have to draw,
get that mask around
to get it so that to get it out. But if you can just do that, I mean, you're just saving time that you can put into other things. Those the little minutia, those little details that are just time sucks, like nobody wants to do.
Exactly.
Transcribing, cropping out hair, masking out hair, whatever. It's like nobody wants to do it.
That, and I think it's going to really impact how we approach photography and film creatively.
Yeah.
The way I've always looked at it is going back to paintings. I'm also a huge art nerd. I am an artist. I show in galleries whenever I get a chance.
Nice.
So unfortunately, I learned the story of how like photography changed painting, which I see as a parallel very much how AI is going to change photography and film.
Interesting.
And that if you look back all the way to, zero AD, and go all the way up until the 1800s, painting had kind of one major purpose, and that it was kind of like a utilitarian purpose, and that like it's portraits, it's scenes, it's sketch artists doing stuff for news.
Yeah, you're capturing life that you can't capture in any other way.
Exactly, that's the only way we had that possible. So for a lot of artists, you look at Michelangelo or Caravaggio or anything like that. These people weren't heralded for their ideas; it was just their skills.
Yeah,
that was it. A lot of their ideas were, rich people coming up to me like, hey, I want a portrait of my wife, or the church coming up to me like, I want, this portrait of whatever.
Yeah.
And
can you paint this on the ceiling?
Yeah, paint this on the ceiling. Have fun. And so a lot of the creativity like really wasn't as heralded.
Right.
In 1835 or whatever it was, when when photograph was first invented and that became a thing, you see this massive switch in painting, because what starts happening is portraits don't need to be painted anymore. Mm-hmm. It's so much cheaper, faster, just more effective, and significantly more realistic to go through a photograph than it is to paint someone's portrait. And same thing with like journalism and all these different ways we start to see people start leaving painting behind in those specific kind of jobs, opting for photography. Which of course was kind of a scary thing for painters at the time, because so many of them lost that work, those kind of little jobs that they didn't necessarily love doing, but that's how they made ends meet. But at the same time, what it did was it exploded the creativity of painting. You look at around that same time that photography started becoming widespread, you see Renoir and Monet who create Impressionism, which is the first major movement to really look different than the last 2,000 years of painting. Where it's less focused on the subject matter and more focused on the emotional feeling and the creativity behind it. And I mean, within the last 150, 200 years, how painting has changed has been dramatic, like massively. You go into, from that to cubism, to surrealism, to Dadaism, to abstractism, to minimalism. And I mean, it's just this massive, massive change in creativity, and the people that are behind it. Suddenly the concept behind the painting becomes way more interesting. And I think in a lot of ways, photography freed painting from its kind of like duties.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a really great point that I had not thought that far back before.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times, when I think of, how technology changes and things, you think of going from records to CDs or, VHS to DVD to then streaming. Yeah. And then what happens with music when it goes from, buying CDs to being able to stream it on Napster and things like
Spotify,
that. Yeah. And or even, television, when television really started taking off in the 1950s and theaters thought that they were going to go out of business because people wanted to watch something on a 6-inch screen at home. And so it's like, Technicolor and widescreen, and they started adding all these things to enhance the theatrical experience to get people out of the home. And so, but I didn't think as far back as literally photography and painting. So that's really interesting. That's fascinating.
And I think it's a really, really cool thing, and something we should take note of, because there were painters who realized that really early on. Like I said, Renoir and Monet, and that kind of class of people who realized what was happening. There's a lot of painters who kept trying to just do the same thing, trying to stay on the same work, and they got left behind. And that's kind of one of the scary things about this, is I think AI is definitely going to change our entire landscape of how things work, and the people who ignore it are I'm sorry, but they're going to get left behind.
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate thing about it.
Well, I mean, look, that's been happening for all of human history.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, look at the taxi companies now. Uber, Lyft, taxis don't really exist anymore like they used to.
The landscape.
There are certain businesses that just newspapers. Newspapers don't exist like they used to. Everything. It's funny to think of. You think of a thing that there's no way that this will go away. This will exist forever.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's just like you don't need it. Anymore.
Yeah, it's like Blockbuster not buying on Netflix.
Right.
They're like,
you had the chance. You had the chance, Blockbuster.
You had it.
You thought it was a dumb idea.
It's in your grasp.
And now look at you.
Yeah, now look at it. But that's how I really feel about this new change that's coming. It's like, if you can figure out how to use it as a tool for your advantage, you're going to be fine. Especially if you, and I think, going back to that parallel with the painting, I think the most important thing about this is if you lean into that creativity side, because film and photography, it's one of the few mediums where it's so strong on both creative and the technical skill, because you have to have so much technical skill in order to do it. But if you kind of lean further into that creative side and focus on how you create your style and how you create that kind of outward appearance, you're going to be fine, especially if you learn how to pull AI into that.
Yeah. So what do you think then? Like, where do you see in your artistic opinion, like how will it change from an artistic level kind of what people are doing?
Yeah, already what I'm seeing a lot is in storyboarding or conceptualizing ideas. I don't think necessarily we're at a point where AI art itself, like the final product being AI, is like kind of where it needs to be. I think there's still too much resistance to get that, and I agree with it too. I don't think that should be the final product.
I agree.
But there's a lot of people, and I've used this for my own projects, where like if I'm trying to come up with an idea and I can't draw, that's not something, and I don't want to go hire an illustrator for this. So AI is perfect opportunity for me. Like it allows me the tools to create the concept before I even go into shooting, and explore it that way without ever having to spend time and money and hiring people and all this stuff. So it does make things a lot easier.
Are you using it for storyboards then to kind of try and do storyboard?
Absolutely. And a lot of photography concepts, like when I'm doing lifestyle stuff or any kind of magazines kind of style stuff, and even with documentaries, which I know is a kind of a crazy thing because, again, like we talked about, it's such an improvisational thing, but just to get the idea of like how this sequence of shots should work, you know, like I really want to have this montage, I can now plan it out before we even start.
Well, and I tell you, ChatGPT is magical.
Oh, it's amazing.
Like, especially version 4, where you can like, just to play around with it, I've taken like, all right, I wrote this screenplay. It's 100 pages. Yeah. I'm going to copy and paste the entire screenplay into ChatGPT 4 and say, put this in a beat by beat format and tell me what all the beats are in this. And it'll break it down by, the Blake Snyder beat sheet or whatever and be like, page 1, page 5. And then like summarize the whole thing for you.
Yeah, get your taglines.
Like all that kind of stuff. And it's like, I wrote the script, right? I wrote all 100 pages, not using ChatGPT to write it. Yeah. But now here, ChatGPT, look at this and summarize some things for me and tell me some things.
And like kind of explain it back to me so I can understand it better.
Right.
Which is a really cool thing.
Did I do all right on this? Does this make any sense? I think there's just so many different ways it can be utilized.
Absolutely.
As a tool that can, enhance what we're doing artistically.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we've already started using it, and I hate to reveal the secret, but whenever we do those, small corporate videos or something for like a city where the script itself, is going to be a VO over some beautiful shots or whatever, and the script is never anything interesting. No one really wants to write that script and put that information in ChatGPT. You have yourself the script. Yeah. And they always come out amazing.
No, they do. I've used it to write little short scripts like, oh man, I got to write this script for like just a little summary video that we're doing of Film USA at the Cannes Film Festival or whatever. Yeah. Okay, ChatGPT, here's what I need. I need it to be this, and this. Write a video script for me. And he'd be like,
yeah, there it is. Done.
And, you go in, you make tweaks, you make changes, you fix some things there. But it just saved me an hour of working through it all. And then now that I see it, I can go in and make adjustments to it and change what I want. Again, it's not going out there and shooting it. Yeah. It's not telling me what I want. I had to tell it what I wanted first. Yeah. And it's just putting it into a usable format.
Exactly. And things like that, like you don't want to focus on the script. Like, I mean, it's important to have a good script. Yeah. But like as a creative, like that's not the thing. You're thinking about how the shots are lining up. You're thinking about what cool shots can you get out of this. All this. The last thing you want to focus on is the script. That's just the guideline. And so to be able to just put that in there, get that done as soon as possible and have a great script and be able to now focus all your attention on everything else, I think you're going to come out with a more effective video most of the time.
Yeah, and even little things like a shot list. So, we've got my film festival, Sunscreen Film Festival, that takes place April 25th to the 28th in St. Pete, Florida, which this podcast will not air until after the festival is over. So I'll let you know how it goes when it's done. But, for like the video team that's going to be at the festival, be like, all right, what do I want them to capture? What are some good things to capture? And what's a shot list for each of these things? And you just punch it in and be like, give me, 10 things that at a film festival that and give me a shot list for that. And it spits it out and you make changes and be like, all right, that just saved me 2 hours of work.
Exactly. It's so beautiful.
And then you're just going to go tell people to shoot it and then edit and create something. Yeah. So it's not doing the creative work at all.
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, it's just a tool. Like we are not at a point yet where it's taken people's jobs. Right. When that happens, I don't know what that's going to look like. But at this point, it is just speeding up our work so much and allowing us to focus on the things we really do want to focus on.
Yeah. We'll all have to be just recording podcasts. I want to see AI do this podcast.
Yeah, try that.
Try it. Try this, AI. Come on.
That's great. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, AI it's a cool thing, man.
Yeah. Well, what are you working on next? Like, what's your next project? Whether that's from a commercial standpoint or from a documentary or creative standpoint.
Yeah, so right now I'm focusing on Dickies, getting that product photography. We are moving into a lot more of their lifestyle stuff, so getting to be a lot more creative with that.
That's cool.
Outside of that, and with Red, we Red never had a photo studio. It was purely video production. So since I've been hired on over the last year, it's been building out this photo studio. So that's my goal for the next year is just kind of work on that. Just keep building out this photo studio, making it more than just having a single client.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then be able to go back into, doing my own thing.
Sure. What is do you have an idea for something for your own thing next?
Yeah. I want to get into further into fashion photography. That's kind of always been my passion, fashion photography and then the art world. That's where I want to focus. And then I do want to create a new documentary in the next year focusing on people with Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. So, see where that goes.
Yeah. Now, do you have people in your life that are affected by Alzheimer's that inspired you to then tell that story?
Yeah, my grandmother, she has dementia now. So watching her go through that process and how much it affected my family and everything, it was kind of one of those really difficult situations but you realize there's so much that comes from it and how science is changing so rapidly on it. There's a lot to be talked about there.
Yeah, and there's so many studies that you can see on things now that be like, if you work on learning a second language, that helps do this. But those are things you can't start at 80. Like you've got to
you got to do that way before.
You got to start earlier, but ways to keep your brain active so that 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now you can fight off those potential things happening. And so it's really interesting to see what those things are and how they, how they're progressing.
Exactly. And I mean, and just how much what causes it and all those things. Yeah. Like I have a friend named Tyler who's working on his PhD right now in toxicology, and he's writing his dissertation on how environmental factors affect Alzheimer's. Because we saw such a massive increase in it in the last 100 years. So, we're looking at, there was a long period of time where lead was everywhere. You know, it wasn't until the 70s that people were like, hey, we should probably stop using lead.
Sure.
And now we have microplastics and things and pollution. And so it's just kind of like, how does all of these factors contribute to this? Even alcohol, which is something that, up until very recently, we were like, a couple of drinks a day is fine or a week is fine. Yeah. And now we're like, oh, no, it's all bad.
Yeah, it's all bad. 3 a day. Or what was it? What was the old thing? How many glasses of red wine? Or 1 glass of red wine?
It's good for your heart.
Good for your heart. It's like, you know what else is good for your heart? Going for a walk.
Yeah, running. Something good like that.
How about you put down the wine and just walk?
Yeah, exactly.
For 20 minutes.
Just, do some exercise.
That's probably a little better for your heart than putting the alcohol and everything else that's in it in your system.
Unfortunately, it's not that easy.
Yeah. It's some doctor somewhere who'd be like, I really like red wine.
He's like, we just got to make this.
Let's just make a study where we show it's good for the heart. And everybody's like, well, if 1 is good, 3 is even better.
Yeah.
You're just guzzling wine every day.
Just keep it going. Drink a whole bottle a day. Why not?
I mean, surely that can't have a bad effect.
Yeah, right? But that is the thing. It's like the further along we get with science, we realize how much things are affecting us on a day-to-day basis. It's just insane how much of that information is just not out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know what the record keeping was like, when you say 100, 150 years ago, but if it's really that there were not the instances of Alzheimer's that long ago and to see what that... I'd be curious to hear what the final result... I don't want to read the whole study, but, ChatGPT summarize it for me.
Yeah.
With the study. Tell me about Alzheimer's and how it was 100 years ago and now and what those effects are.
I'll wait till the movie comes out.
Yeah, that's right. You make the movie...
And we'll come back to
it. Then I'll just watch that.
That sounds like a deal.
Well, Tyler, we've got to wrap things up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the Dallas Film Podcast today. Yeah. Do you want to shout out your social media, anything where people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at superdupertyler.com. That's kind of my moniker. Or on Instagram at super_duper_Tyler.
Super_duper_Tyler.
That's the one.
All right. Love it. All right. Thanks, everybody, for checking out the Dallas Film Podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.